Hello students, do you have your PTE exam coming up pretty soon and want to practice with some repeated questions? Well, look no further. For a limited time only, we're providing access to our most repeated question bank for absolutely free of cost. All you gotta do is sign up using the link in the description down below or by scanning this QR code. All the best for your next PTE exam. Now on with this video. Cheers.
The shuttle was designed to be a space truck. It's a multi-purpose vehicle. We've done a tremendous number of different things with it. It's the most versatile space vehicle that has ever been built. We've used it to launch satellites. We've used it to repair satellites in orbit and put them back into orbit. We've used it to capture satellites and bring them back to Earth for repair. We've outfitted it with the space lab built by our European partners and used it before the era of the space station to do scientific research. We used it as part of our partnership with the Russians, which is still continuing, first as part of the Mir space station, where we actually prolonged the useful life of Mir by several years through logistical supply visits with the shuttle. And now, of course, we're using it to build the new International Space Station, which is a huge international partnership.
The Right Honourable Sir Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, was a British statesman, best known as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom during the Second World War. At various times a soldier, journalist, author, and politician, Churchill is generally regarded as one of the most important leaders in British and world history. Considered reactionary on some issues, such as granting independence to Britain's colonies, and at times regarded as a self-promoter who changed political parties to further his career, it was his wartime leadership that earned him iconic status. Some of his peacetime decisions, such as restoring the gold standard in 1924, were disastrous, as was his World War I decision to land troops on the Dardanelles. However, during 1940, when Britain alone opposed Hitler's Nazi Germany in the free world, his stirring speeches inspired, motivated, and uplifted a whole people during their darkest hour. Churchill saw himself as a champion of democracy against tyranny, and was profoundly aware of his own role and destiny. Indeed, he believed that God had placed him on earth to carry out heroic deeds for the protection of Christian civilization and human progress. A providential understanding of history would concur with Churchill's self-understanding. Considered old-fashioned, even reactionary by some people today, he was actually a visionary whose dream was of a united world, beginning with a union of the English-speaking peoples, then embracing all cultures. In his youth, he cut a dashing figure as a cavalry officer, as seen in the 1972 film Young Winston, directed by Richard Attenborough. But the images of him that are the most widely remembered are as a rather overweight, determined, even pugnacious-looking senior statesman, as he is depicted to the right.
We can ask two fundamental questions about animal behavior, they referred to as proximate and ultimate. Proximate questions are those concerned with the mechanisms that bring about behavior, ultimate questions are those concerned with the evolution of behavior. We can divide the proximate and ultimate questions into two sub-questions. For proximate, how does the behavior develop, and secondly what causes the behavior? For ultimate, you can ask how did the behavior evolve, and secondly what is the adaptive significance of the behavior, what's purpose? Together these comprise what are called Tinbergen's 4 questions about animal behavior. Nico Tinbergen was one of the founding fathers of the study of animal behavior. These questions represent the different ways of studying animal behavior, and understanding the difference between those 4 questions are fundamental to understanding behavior and indeed the whole of biology. How do we study animal behavior? Well, that depends on the type of question we're hoping to answer.
The infinite monkey theorem states that a monkey hitting keys at random on a typewriter keyboard for an infinite amount of time will almost surely type a given text, such as the complete works of William Shakespeare. In this context, almost surely is a mathematical term with a precise meaning, and the monkey isn't an actual monkey, but a metaphor for an abstract device that produces a random sequence of letters ad infinitum. The theorem illustrates the perils of reasoning about infinity by imagining a vast but finite number, and vice versa. The probability of a monkey exactly typing a complete work such as Shakespeare's Hamlet is so tiny that the chance of it occurring during a period of time of the order of the age of the universe is minuscule, but not zero. But technologies can help monkeys to write. If the monkeys are given a pen and some papers to spell the word monkey, they can only scratch on the paper. By contrast, if they are given a typewriter, it will take them over 10 years to produce the right spelling. However, if they can use computer programming, they can finish the task within a day.
Welsh is a Celtic language spoken in Wales by about 740,000 people, and in the Welsh colony in Patagonia, Argentina by several hundred people. There are also Welsh speakers in England, Scotland, Canada, the USA, Australia and New Zealand. At the beginning of the 20th century about half of the population of Wales spoke Welsh as an everyday language. Towards the end of the century, the proportion of Welsh speakers had fallen to about 21%. According to the 2001 census, 582,368 people can speak Welsh, 659,301 people can either speak, read or write Welsh, and 797,717 people, 28% of the population, claim to have some knowledge of the language. According to a survey carried out by S4C, the Welsh language TV channel, the number of Welsh speakers in Wales is around 750,000, and about 1.5 million people can understand Welsh. In addition, there are an estimated 133,000 Welsh speakers living in England, about 50,000 of them in the Greater London area.
Determinant: human behavior is affected by internal and external factors. At the end of lecture, the speaker mentioned that psychologists are interested in explaining human behavior. Determinant is influenced by two factors, the personal factors which are internal and the environmental factors which are external. The personal factors include people's belief on certain things and their individual thinking about it, while the environmental factors include temperature, air pressure and the others thinking about them. In conclusion, one's determinant are affected by both himself and the environment.
Welcome to your very first tutorial in biology. Now, in this video series what I want to do is I want to talk to you guys about many different topics concerning biology. For example, I want to talk to you guys about DNA and genetics in cells, in bacteria, in life and a whole bunch of interesting stuff. But since this is the very first video, I think what we should do in this video is just stick with the very basics. And the first thing I want to do is talk to you guys about what is biology. So, let's go ahead and answer that question. And the definition of biology is this: the study of life in living organisms. Alright, that makes sense up to a certain point up until organisms, because you may have heard of organisms before. And you may have your own definition, but the scientific definition of an organism is a living thing. Well, that's easy. We know what living things are. I'm a living thing, plants, grass is a living thing. My puppy named Old Dan, cutest puppy ever, by the way, is a living thing. But whenever we talk about living things, believe it or not, things get rid of complicated, because then you have to ask yourself, what is life? Well, of course, if you ask your grandma or your best friend, or even if you ask a philosopher what is life, everyone is going to give you kind of a different definition of their outlook on life. However, whenever scientists and biologists were first deciding, you know what is life? That's the problem, that everyone had their own separate definition of life itself. So, what they need to do before biology was even invented, which is, of course, the study of life, is scientists needed to agree on the definition of life.
All of my research and that I conducted was my 60+ graduate students, was motivated by their need to learn, so that we can teach. Of course, in some inventions happened along the way, but I've always considered the end the result. And I always consider that this invention to be byproducts of the learning process. The end product for me was always better understanding, or when one really succeeded in unifying theory that can help us in teaching the subject. I've also looked at teaching as a vehicle to try new ideas, of new ways to doing things on an intelligent group of learners. That is, as the vehicle for the teaching research results. And in my experience, this kind of teaching is the most stimulated and motivating to students. I am also uncovered many interesting research problems as the cause of teaching assumption. It is this unity of research and teaching, their close connection, and the benefits gathered by exercising, and the interplay that to me recognized the successful professor.
The powerful influence of Stevenson's text on the discourse of dissociation is strikingly apparent in the work of American physician and psychologist Morton Prince. Reber credits Prince with pioneering the phenomenon of popularizing MPD as embodied in a spectacular case. Prince's Dissociation of a Personality, 1905, tells the story of Miss Christine Beecham, a pseudonym for Clara Norton Fowler, who, according to Prince, is a person in whom several personalities have become developed. But we can really thank the Great Exhibition of 1851 for giving us the world's premier taxi service, for it was going to this exhibition, and this fabulous exhibition inventions from all around the four corners of the empire that the visitors were appalled, dismayed and vexed by their journeys to this exhibition because the cabbies of the day, and their horse-drawn carts were absolutely terrible, could not find their way to this exhibition. And, so, a great public outcry, the London Authority sets up Public Carriage Office, which is an organization that still exists. And you can take a short walk to Penton Street up the road. And this Public Carriage Office took on the responsibility of licensing all major taxi drivers in London. All taxi drivers from 1851 onwards had to pass what is now known as the London Knowledge, was phenomenal knowledge of London. What is the London Knowledge? It's the ability to remember the 25,000 streets, have it all interconnected and all the main arterial roads in and out of London. Cabbies need to know all this plus 1,000 points of specific interest: cafes, bars, public offices. They need to know them all as part of their training.
The comics I show you with lots of people chatting around in a room is a form of description. We use different kinds of methods to describe a situation. Sometimes we have to use visual description, particularly when we do not witness the scenario. I was born during the Second World War and my hometown is X. For example, when I asked my mother about the war, I always ask her, "You have mentioned this or that when you talked to me." When asked her about the shelter, I asked her what the shelter looks like and when did you go to the shelter. From her response I could get more visual evidence as I can't to write my book.
Commission-only sales compensation plans are exactly what they sound like. You pay your salespeople for the sales they bring in and nothing else. There is no guarantee of income. These types of plans are easier to administer than salary plus commission and provide better value for your money paid as they are based solely on sales achieved. They also tend to attract fewer candidates, but do attract the most top-performing and hardest-working sales professionals who know they can make a good income because they know how to sell. On the other hand, though, they can create aggression within your sales team and low income security, which can lead to a high turnover rate and sales rep burnout from stress.
So that creates tensions, and that's what I want to talk about. Because I think it's important that we are, as a society, able to have an informed debate about how much privacy is enough but not too much, how much security is enough but not too much. Privacy, as a human right, that's simply quoting the Universal Declaration. In the physical world, we've got all kinds of protections. There is evidence that we care about our privacy. We've got locks, we've got obscured glass, we've got lots, we wear clothes, we put up shutters. And technology continues to erode the privacy that exists in the real world, in the three spatial dimensions. Security cameras, automatic number plate recognition take away anonymity. Long lenses, paparazzi, take away distance and the privacy that used to create. And body scanners are increasingly being used to see through, for example. This process isn't going to slow down, and the new quantum technologies are actually being able to do gravitational sensing. And that's advancing at a remarkable rate. And you can't shield gravity. So some of the new quantum technologies are able already to see through walls. And there are technologies also for seeing round corners now using scattered light from lasers. Technology continues to erode privacy. I think with our linguistic training we also get all this invisible training to be authorities, to be the people who know. It is part of that process that you come out as a world authority on your chosen subject. But when we move into working with communities, we have to recognize that the communities have to be the authority in their language. Actually, a woman in the class I'm teaching at Sydney at the moment, a career woman, expressed this very nicely. Although she was talking about something else, she was distinguishing expertise from authority. And certainly linguists, because of our training, we do have expertise in certain very narrow areas of language, but we don't have the authority over what to do with that knowledge or what to do with other knowledge that the community produces. I guess for me the bottom line is languages are lost because of the dominance of one person over another. That's not rocket science, it's not hard to work that out. But then what that means is if in working with language revival we continue to hold the authority, we actually haven't done anything towards undoing how languages are lost in the first place, so in a sense the languages are still lost if the authority is still there.
Frogs are a diverse and largely carnivorous group of short-bodied, tailless amphibians composing the order Anura. The oldest fossil proto-frog appeared in the early Triassic of Madagascar, but molecular clock dating suggests their origins may extend further back to the Permian, 265 million years ago. Frogs are widely distributed, ranging from the tropics to subarctic regions, but the greatest concentration of species diversity is found in tropical rainforests. There are approximately 4,800 recorded species, accounting for over 85% of extant amphibian species. They are also one of the 5 most diverse vertebrate orders. Besides living in fresh water and on dry land, the adults of some species are adapted for living underground or in trees. Adult frogs generally have a carnivorous diet consisting of small invertebrates, but omnivorous species exist and a few feed on fruit. Frogs are extremely efficient at converting what they eat into body mass. They are an important food source for predators and part of the food web dynamics of many of the world's ecosystems. The skin is semi-permeable, making them susceptible to dehydration, so they either live in moist places or have special adaptations to deal with dry habitats.
The sound of a cracking knee isn't particularly pleasant. But it gets worse when you listen up close. Knee cracking recording it is for most people. But for me, it actually just makes me excited. Omer Iran, an electrical engineer at Georgia Tech. I actually feel like there's some real information in them that can be exploited for the purposes of helping people with rehab. Iran's experience with cracking knees goes back to his days as an undergrad at Stanford, where he threw discus. If I had a really hard workout, then the next day, of course, I'd be sore, but I'd also sometimes feel this catching or popping or creaking every now and then in my knee. A few years later, he found himself building tiny microphones at a high-end audio company. So when he got to Georgia Tech and heard the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, wanted better tech for knee injuries, he thought, knee cracking recording, why not strap tiny microphones to people's knees, to eavesdrop as their legs bend? What we think it is the cartilage and bone rubbing against each other, the surfaces inside the knee rubbing against each other, during those movements. He and a team of physiologists and engineers built a prototype with stretchy athletic tape and a few tiny mics and skin sensors. And preliminary tests on athletes suggest the squishy sounds the device picks up are more erratic, and more irregular, in an injured knee than in a healthy one. Which Ivan says might allow patients and doctors to track healing after surgery. Details appear in the IEEE Transactions on Biomedical Engineering.
Brain development during childhood. There are 3 stages, starting from the primitive brain, limbic brain, and finally to the neocortex. Although interrelated, the 3 had its own function. Primitive brain functions to manage the physical to survive, manage reflex, motor motion control, monitoring body functions, and process information coming from sensing. Limbic brain functioning as a liaison to process emotions and the brain thinks, and the primitive brain. While the thinking brain, which is the most objective part of the brain, receiving input from the primitive brain and the limbic brain. However, he needed more time to process information from the primitive brain and the limbic brain. The brain thinks the merger is also a place of experience, memory, feeling, and thinking ability to give birth to ideas and actions. Nerve myelination of the brain takes place in sequence, starting from the primitive brain, the limbic brains, and brain thought. Neural pathways are more frequently used to make more myelin thicken. Increasingly thicker myelin, the faster the nerve impulses or signals travel along nerves. Therefore, a growing child is encouraged to receive input from the environment in accordance with its development.
But in the face of this sense of disempowerment, there is surprisingly a decline in involvement in organizations which seek to share wealth and opportunities, protect one another's rights and work towards the common good. According to the United Nations, civil society groups have grown 40-fold since the turn of last century. Internationally, the nonprofit sector is worth $1 trillion, and there are 700,000 such organizations in Australia alone. The UN recognizes 37,000 specifically civil society organizations across the globe, and gave 3,500 accreditation to the 2002 World Summit on Sustainable Development. This profound movement towards harnessing voices and resources from outside the realm of governments and officialdom reflects the profound growth in NGOs' third sector, as some call it. As Robert Putnam discovered in the field of local government in Italy, the best predictor of governmental success was the strength and density of a region's civic associations.
There's sugar in a lot of foods where you don't expect it. Of course there's lots of sugar in donuts of ice cream, or pastries, or other things that are sweet, candy of course, but there are other places where you see it and you don't necessarily expect it. So as an example, peanut butter. Here's a list of ingredients from Skippy peanut butter and you see that sugar is the second most common ingredient. So that you may know from the reading food labels that these ingredients in any food labels that are listed in order of how much there is in the food itself, so sugar comes right after peanuts. Here's another example, beef stew. You wouldn't necessarily expected to find sugar in beef stew but it's there. Now it's down a list of ingredients, it's actually toward the end, but if you look at the marketing of this and food at the can, it says, there's fresh potatoes and carrots, but actually there's more sugar in this than there is carrots and so you wouldn't eat something like beef stew and expect to find this to be the case. I have said before that you can't have a civilization that doesn't have art. When we think about the great civilizations historically, all of them had a great production of culture and art because a society did not fail to observe itself. The sophistication of the great civilizations were their ability to look at themselves. What exactly allows a society to be the producers of art and culture and to mirror back to the core of the society? What is being produced at that moment? How do people think of themselves, and how are the individuals relating to the social structure at that time? Art is the vehicle in which guides us towards understanding what we were to take away from art. What would be that mirror? How do we see what we are about? How would we understand what was going on in Paris at the time of the Impressionists when people were learning to see in a completely different way? Before cinematography and similar link that were invented, people looked at the world in a very different way, which was considered very radical at that time.